Karate Kid Legends. I really hope that this wasn't the video that I had to make regarding this movie, but here we are. I'm asking the same exact question now that I was asking when I first heard that this movie was even being made, and that is, why was this made? At first I was fully against this movie, considering that I'm a big Karate Kid fan, and I felt like we didn't really need another Karate Kid remake / reboot, because Cobra Kai was already the perfect comeback to the Karate Kid franchise. Once they announced that Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio would be returning as their respective characters, I was still a bit against it because it was literally known by everyone that the Miyagi universe and the Han universe weren't canon to each other, and I felt like they were just forcing it together. But once the trailer started coming out, I started to get excited for it, but was still on the fence because it still just felt so forced, and I felt like we still didn't need it. And it sucks to say that I was literally right about all of it, because honestly, this movie is not good. Now, I'm not just saying this because I'm stuck in the nostalgia of literally every other Karate Kid property. The movie itself is just so disappointing. Part of me is mad at myself for not expecting this, but the movie is just a cash grab with no heart put into it. I'll be saying spoilers in this review for the sake of my review, so if you haven't seen it, don't watch this video until after you watch the movie and formed your own opinion. But without further ado, let me explain the problem with Karate Kid Legends. Now first, I'm going to start off with the good and what I personally liked about it. As many problems as this movie has, it is still somewhat enjoyable to see them try to do something new as far as the overall story of the Karate Kid. Everyone knows that it starts with a kid moving to a new city with their parents, then they touch down and immediately meet a friend and a girl who's the villain next or whatever, and that's how the problems start. Then they get their mentor who acts like a father figure / teacher. Well, they do that same trope in the start of the movie, of course, but then they introduce a new plot point with the main character Lee teaching his methods to the father of the girl he likes, whose name is Victor, who is an ex-boxer who owns a pizza shop in the city. He teaches him so that he can win a boxing match in order to pay back his debt to a loan shark, who just so happens to be the owner of the dojo of Lee's bully Connor, who is his crush Mia's ex-boyfriend. In a lot of the early reviews that I've seen regarding this part of the story, most say that it's weird for a Karate Kid movie and feels out of place, but I honestly like the addition and I feel like it progresses the story decently. The boxing match ends up going wrong right as Victor is about to win, as the sensei of the evil dojo, who honestly I don't even know the name of, orders Victor's opponent to fight dirty and he completely knocks him out and injures him. I really like how this tied into one of the recurring storylines of the movie of Lee watching his brother get killed in front of him back in China and him freezing up in the process. The scene is actually impactful. This new addition is one of the few things that I liked about the movie, as it was pretty entertaining to see the kid actually teaching the adult this time around. Ben Wang and Joshua Jackson actually have good chemistry and they have a good dynamic. The movie is actually pretty funny as well, with Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio's dynamic, plus the other main characters who are very likable and fun to follow. The fight scenes were all pretty well choreographed and are very entertaining. Ben Wang as Lee is easily the most skilled Karate Kid out of all 4 people who have been given the title, and he is a good Karate Kid with a good personality. The movie's problems don't really have anything to do with him, but I hate to say, these are the only good things that I really liked about the movie. The first major problem that I have with this movie is the way that it is forced for Mr. Han to know Mr. Miyagi in order to get Daniel into the movie. They open the movie with the scene from Karate Kid Part 2 of Mr. Miyagi telling Daniel the story of how his family's karate was born, and they add an extra dialogue saying how Mr. Han's family met his family way back when, and that's how they knew each other later on down the line. Now this was completely forced on me immediately when I first heard it, because for the past 15 years since the release of the 2010 remake, it was common knowledge that the remake had nothing to do with the original timeline. Now I'm not gonna act like the story doesn't make sense, since the original story is that one of Miyagi's ancestors did wash up in China, which is where Mr. Han lives. But I feel like they could have made it way more convincing. Considering that Daniel had a huge part in winning the Sekai Sekai and Cobra Kai, which legitimately was the biggest karate tournament in the world, it would have made so much more sense if he went to Daniel after seeing him win and been like, yeah, I want Lee to learn Miyagi karate because your group's performance at the Sekai Sekai. That would have made a lot more sense. But instead they shoehorned an excuse for Han to know Miyagi so that Daniel could be thrown into the movie. I say all that to say that Daniel has no business being in this movie. He's literally here for fan service that has no real substance to it. He feels more like a cameo. Story-wise, it literally makes no sense for Daniel to even want to help train Lee. He does explain it as wanting to spread Mr. Miyagi's legacy any chance that he gets, which does make sense, but it just doesn't at the same time because he literally still has Miyagi-Do back home because this movie supposedly takes place 3 years after Cobra Kai. And that brings me to another point. It's annoying how they basically try to disregard Cobra Kai and even the 2010 remake. We get no mentions of the Sekai Sekai, any of the Cobra Kai characters. They don't even mention Dre from the remake, who is literally the reason why Mr. Han is as happy and jolly as he is in this movie. It tries to be its own movie while also still banking on the Karate Kid nostalgia. I feel like there's just no way that you can do that. That's another issue that I had that I probably should have expected. They recycle the same Karate Kid tropes from literally every other Karate Kid movie. Lee has no father, but they do introduce the new issue with his brother being killed and Han being there to watch. Lee meets Mia, and that's what makes Connor hate him. He gets beat up by Connor. He's a part of an evil dojo that teaches no mercy and all that. The hero learns new techniques in the span of a couple weeks. It's basically the same story, but with a little bit of different plot pieces sprinkled into it. You can only tell the same story so many times. Another thing that this movie seriously lacks is an interesting villain. The villains are terrible, and that's in all areas. Even though every Karate Kid movie isn't received well by critics, the villains are one of the main reasons why fans love those movies. So much so to where they were able to be brought back in Cobra Kai to tell a bigger story. But in this movie, the villains are completely forgettable. The Cobra Kai stand-in dojo, which I think was called Demolition, is a little generic Karate Kid villain group with no depth at all. Like I said, I don't even know the head sensei's name, even though he literally causes the most problems in the whole movie. And the Johnny stand-in Connor Day is the most generic Disney Channel villain ever. He is decently threatening and is a great fighter, but that's not enough to warrant a Lee and Connor rivalry. He hardly even messes with Lee in the movie. People like Johnny and Chang from the original and the remake were great villains because they were literally torturing Daniel and Drake constantly throughout the whole movie. All Connor does to Lee is literally punch him in the face for no reason in the beginning of the movie and embarrass him at school when they have a one-on-one fight. Other than that, he literally doesn't do anything until the final fight at the end. He has some of the worst dialogue ever, as all he does is call Lee Beijing every time he talks to him, as if that's an insult. The rest is done by the head sensei, who is responsible for Victor being hospitalized and is a loan shark, and just has goons on standby for whatever reason as an excuse for Daniel and Han to have a fight scene later in the movie. He is hostile towards Connor, but he is nowhere near a Kreese or a Terry Silver. In fact, he feels like both Kreese and Silver combined, but with literally no character depth at all. After he gets Victor hospitalized, the whole depth plotline is just dropped to focus on Daniel and Han training Lee in the tournament. When Lee beats Connor at the end, because obviously, it doesn't even feel earned because there was literally no build up in that rivalry. The dojo doesn't even play a part in the story like the previous Karate Kid properties and are the most generic villains in the whole franchise that only cause problems in the first half of the movie. And that brings me to probably my biggest issue with this movie, which is the fact that it is so rushed and the pacing sucks. The pacing leads to bad editing with both the fights and the scenes themselves. This movie is literally only an hour and 34 minutes, which is the shortest movie in the whole series. That's not enough for a Karate Kid movie in any context. Every movie in the franchise is at least an hour and 50 minutes long. It has enough time to tell its story, but this one doesn't. While I do like the new student teacher's adult plotline, it actually hurts the movie because they spend the whole first half of the movie on it. Then by the time Mr. Han and Daniel finally start training Lee together, they rush everything after that point. And Daniel doesn't even show up until the second half of the movie, but they advertise it as if he was gonna be there the whole time. His role isn't even as big as it should be, considering that he's the one that knows karate. It's so rushed that in the training scenes, we don't even see Daniel teach him any Miyagi techniques to use in the tournament, but since it's a bunch of fast training montages to pass the time, we're just supposed to believe that he's learning karate. Like I said, Daniel doesn't even need to be in the movie. We get to the tournament in the span of less than 30 minutes from the point that Daniel is introduced, and the actual tournament itself sucks. Every time they land a point, they show an arcade cartoon style graphic, and there's barely any fight scenes of Lee making his way through the tournament, and when there is, they're short because it's obviously rushed. They call it the biggest tournament in the city, but every fight other than the final fight is held on the street with a mat and a big crowd of people. However, the final fight setting is cool as it's set on a rooftop. But even with that, the final fight is anticlimactic and it doesn't really have any major stakes towards it. Like I said earlier, even when Lee wins, it's underwhelming because Connor wasn't a good villain and hardly even did anything to lead throughout the movie. We could have had so much more moments with them to progress the story, but of course, there's only so much you can do with a 94-minute runtime. I don't know if it's the script or the runtime that makes the movie feel rushed, but Karate Kid Legends was overall disappointing. It has its redeeming qualities that still made it a somewhat fun movie to watch, but it's honestly not good. It's not entirely bad either, as I was still entertained by some of the characters and the partially new story, but I don't know if I ever even want to watch this movie again because it's forgettable and it's simply a cash grab that wasn't made for the fans. I seriously question why they even made this movie. This leaves a partial stain on the Karate Kid legacy, as we got such a great show with Cobra Kai that tied the original movies up so well that literally 3 months later, we get another movie that we didn't need or ask for. And you can't say that they made this to introduce the new generation to Karate Kid, because not only do we have Cobra Kai that literally just ended, but even the 2010 remake is still fairly new. This was definitely a cash grab to bank off of the success of Cobra Kai. Marketing it as if Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio are in the whole movie and constantly preaching the whole 2 branches, 1 tree thing was annoying and so obviously a cash grab because they're barely even in the movie. and the fact that the same studio that made Cobra Kai made this is crazy. This movie is like if Spider-Man No Way Home brought in Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield and the movie sucked. In fact, I saw another review of this movie that said that Sony gave this movie the Marvel B-movie treatment, which are movies like Morbius and Madam Web, where they just don't care, and that is the most accurate thing I've heard regarding this movie. There's hardly any heart with this movie, and it had so much wasted potential. I think the main reason why this was the case was because they were on the Cobra Kai time schedule and wanted to release this movie as soon as Cobra Kai ended to capitalize off the hype of the final season. So they made up a story and threw in Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio to reel fans in. They even have a funny post-credit scene with Daniel and Johnny Lawrence to further capitalize on the combination of the two universes. But enough yapping, what do I rate this movie? I am heavily disappointed by this movie and have a lot of critiques on it, but it did have some good moments in it and I somewhat enjoyed it, but I have to give Karate Kid Legends a solid 6 out of 10. This movie is mid. This may not be the best Karate Kid movie and I may never watch it again, but I think we can all agree that it's still better than the next Karate Kid. Screw that movie. Later on down the line though, this movie will probably get the same treatment as Next Karate Kid where nobody acknowledges it, and it is just a cash grab with wasted potential. They dropped the ball on this one.